U.S. and European airstrikes in Libya trying to stop Muammar Qaddafi from massacring more of his own people. Libya's civil war, Egypt's revolution, and unrest in Yemen and Bahrain as all grave concern to Israel. And there's the news tonight on its own land. Israel just suffered its worst rocket attacks in 2 years this weekend, with Hamas publicly claiming responsibility. Israeli Defense Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Ehud Barak joins us. Good evening, sir. And as I look at what's going on, I mean, you've got what's going on in the Gaza with Hamas sending rockets into Israel, and now Israel striking back and their injuries. You've got Qaddafi, who says that the war there is in part because of oil and Zionists, and you've got Syria siding with Gaddafi, and you've got the referendum on Saturday in Egypt voting, which growing influence of Muslim Brotherhood. There's an awful lot going on your plate for your country. How do you respond to these? What's your reaction to all these?
First of all, in regard to the Gaza events, we cannot accept these indiscriminate attacks on our citizenry with mortars. I believe no one would accept it, and we are responding. Basically, it's the result of an extremely effective operation that we have along the Gaza border fence. Some 4 or 5 terrorists were killed in separate 3 incidents. That's regarding to Gaza. I hope it will not deteriorate, but I do not recommend to Hamas to put us to the test. In regard to the overall historic earthquake in the Arab world, I believe that in the very long term, it bodes well for all of us, because it's a movement in the right direction. But in the meantime, as you have mentioned, duly so, it's a lot of problems. It emphasized the fact that Israel is living in a tough neighborhood, nothing like Western Europe or North America. We have to rely upon ourselves at any moment of truth and have to be strong. But fortunately enough, we are not at the center of the screen there. We are not part of the picture. In spite of all the remarks that you have made, it's up to the Arab peoples to struggle for their rights to change regime or to impose corrections and new procedures in their internal political life. And I think that it's the right step by the free world to intervene in Libya in order to put an end to this massacre of his own citizens by their own leader.
Well, you may not be directly involved in the events in Libya and Egypt, like what's going on in Gaza, but the problem is that Egypt has always, or at least in recent history, they've had a treaty with an agreement with your country, and now that Mubarak is gone, and if the Muslim Brotherhood, with great uncertainty, rises to power, that could change the dynamic considerably for you and for many countries in the region. Isn't that not true?
It could become true. I hope it won't. I talked to Tantawi, Field Marshal Tantawi, after he took office. We happened to face each other at the battlefield as battalion commanders some 37 years ago. I talked to him and told him, you know, I recommend that we will be responsible enough to avoid our successor from being involved in the same kind of struggle that we had. I believe that the Egyptian new regime will have or take into account the interest that Egypt has in continuing the peace process with Israel, as well as other international commitments, among other things, in order to make them capable of holding their head over the water regarding to the economic situation and having in mind the price of commodities in the world. So I believe there are many constraints on them not to deteriorate the commitments to the peace process.
What's your plan, your current plan, having to do with Hamas and Gaza? I mean, it does seem like it certainly has escalated. I mean, the rockets, and now they claim 19 have been injured. It doesn't look like things are quieting down. It seems like they're escalating right now.
I don't think that it's healthy to go into the details. As I've said, we have to respond, and we respond when we will have to respond. But basically, I hope and wish that it will not deteriorate, and it's, of course, up to them as well as up to us. But as you mentioned earlier, Muslim Brotherhood is a major threat in Egypt. mainly for the Egyptian society, more than probably than for Israel, we have to take in the long term into account the fact that that things could change and that the whole neighborhood is not exactly stable. At the same time, we cannot but admit that certain kind of political reforms are urgently needed all around the region.
Minister, thank you, sir.